Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman. A few years ago, I wrote and performed a solo show called The Edge of Every Day, which was an exploration of the rough edges and contradictions we all face and grapple with. The show hit a nerve, and the relevance of the topic would only grow over time more than I could have foreseen. So, here we are. Real talk with real people, sharing stories and perspectives that spark provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening.
Pressing down on you, no menace.
Hello, everyone. We are live in the Hive. Thank you for joining me on this, the 9th episode of The Edge of Every Day, here on TalkRadio.NYC. And Happy New Year!
New Year!
Happy New Year! After a brief holiday hiatus, we are back on the edge with courageous conversations, and we are recharged to face what awaits us in 2022, hopefully. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, and for those of you who don't know me yet, I encourage you to check out my bio on TalkRadio.NYC. Of course, you can visit my website, sandrabargman.com, or you can tune into any of my previous episodes. In a nutshell, this show is about celebrating triumphs, pushing boundaries, and exploring rough edges. Through courageous conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we're fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradoxes and contradictions live in our beliefs and our understandings, both internally and collectively in the world around us. Those places we don't want to look at. We live in challenging times, but we must come to understand that life isn't black or white. It's an embrace of both. And the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So thanks for tuning in. And without further ado, it is time for me to introduce our guest this evening. Dr. Jane Galloway is a visionary leader, ordained pastor and doctor of ministry, professional recovery educator, author, and accomplished stage and screen actor. She is dedicated to building community and raising consciousness through art, psychology, spirituality, education, community, urban design, social justice, and critical thinking. She is a compassionate yet dynamic voice for equality and reconciliation in her community and beyond. Her passion is creating bridges between cultures and also connecting people to their own deepest calling. In her groundbreaking book, The Gateways, The Wisdom of 12-Step Spirituality, Dr. Jane presents the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous squarely in the context of 21st century spirituality, with breadth, skill, and sensitivity that helps readers of any faith or of none experience profound spiritual awakening. From California to the urban center of New York City, Jane is a leader redefining spiritual community. She's led communities in NYC and Los Angeles, California, is the founder of T.R.I.B.E, an acronym for transformation, realization, inspiration, belonging, expression. T.R.I.B.E launched in New York City and has expanded as an umbrella for social practice art beyond one city. Jane states she has come to believe that artists are uniquely positioned to speak the world into a new reality. She says, we are all capable of being artists by intention, whatever our profession, creating the conditions for people to transform, first themselves, then the world. Welcome, Jane Galloway.
Hi, thank you. Here.
I am so thrilled that you have said yes to be on the show. Happy New Year.
New Year. I'm looking at where you are. It's so fantastic. Now that is your what? Your salon or
My salon, yes. I've chosen to put that up. That is a picture of the plum. This is my transformed garage on my property up in the Catskills, which is where I'm tuning in from. But this is a virtual background. I wanted to put this up because I want to, yeah, totally. But ultimately, I know, isn't it great? But ultimately, it's a green screen. Ultimately, I'm going to change some pictures potentially throughout tonight. But ultimately, my goal is to do the show from the plum when the weather is better. I mean, this is literally like another room in my house. But its inspiration was to be a quintessential salon space for intimate gatherings of all kinds. I mean, certainly for small weddings, which is one of the many things I do, and for small house concerts and friends of mine in the cabaret world who may want to come up and sing and perform, but also for a quintessential salon, meaning that it's based on the idea of the salons that started in the 16th and 17th century, where a female would be sort of the hostess, not a male. A female was typically in charge of the salons where, you know, it was started on entertainment, but it really moved into these people coming for deep conversations about that we're doing now in the Edge of Everyday, about politics, about literature, about social justice, etc. So that was my hope for this. So
well,
thanks
it
for
sounds
asking.
fantastic and it looks great. Gertrude Stein, of course, is well known for her salon in Paris and having so many
So
fabulous.
many fantastic. Yeah, it was about equality for gender and race, et cetera, et cetera. That hence the women
And
really
art,
pushing
amazing
and
art.
inviting the women into the conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
So just glorious, which is the
Beautiful.
focus for our evening. But I wanted to ask you, did you make any resolutions for this year? Is that something you do?
You know, I don't do that. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
used
don't
to.
either, but
Yeah,
I think
I really
about, I
don't.
reflect.
Yeah, I'm very tuned into and have been, I think forever, but much more over the last years, tuned into evolutionary growth. And so I'm always evolving and kind of letting go of what doesn't serve. And I lead a very examined life, self-examined.
I love that.
So there isn't a lot of detritus hanging around. I thought I was kind of thinking about how I would even describe to myself what this last year has been about. And I thought, wow, you know, the art of the edit. The art of the edit.
I love it. That's
Yeah,
great. I'm
yeah,
so on board with that. Well, that, that totally goes in hand with, I wouldn't say mine is a resolution, and I have long given up resolutions too, but I do, like you, lead an evolved life, and I'm constantly, but because it's such a collective choice for a new beginning, at least we in the United States, it's this big oomph to re-examine and to reflect. I do indeed spend some time. And I just resolved this year, or this New Year's, that the thing that I most want to focus on is not wasting time. As
what,
time
what,
collapses, as time speeds up around us, there's no time to waste.
okay.
Not that I thought that I was wasting time, but it feels enormous this year that we are stepping into this new, evolution, a collective evolution. And there's no time to waste. There's no procrastination. There's no time to chit chat slowly. It's about forceful ideas and speaking
So that's
the truth.
interesting. I would say that I have become newly a fan of wasting time. Really, over the last year and a half, or certainly during the COVID situation,
I get that.
I did not realize. I mean, I knew it. I kept dreaming, like, I wish I could go to an artist retreat. I wish I could spend and write and work at and then suddenly the world imposed one.
Yeah.
And so I found myself so intensely creative when I didn't feel the pressure of that outward. There's no time to waste. I have had a sense of urgency or too long for me.
Ah,
And so my thing, and I've built communities and tried to hold things together and raise funds and keep people and to try to, and I realized I completely burned out. I mean, I really did. And burnout is no joke
yeah. I
because,
know. I get it.
yeah. So the listening thing, I mean, what I got, because I'm in my studio, which is, used to be a garage as well.
With your
But
gorgeous painting behind you.
that's, yeah, one of my paintings. Thank you. So, but what I got was that it was so quiet,
Mm.
and I could really hear much more.
Interesting. I know. I totally get that. This goes to me, that goes hand in hand with productiveness, the urgency and the productiveness. And I certainly, I feel as though, I'm sure you've always been a deep listener. It's not as if your productiveness didn't have that. And, I certainly have mine, paying a deep attention and in the choices that I make moving forward. But yeah, I mean, this is not about, my sense of urgency is not about production. It's about,
Yeah,
as time collapses, there's a stepping out and a stepping forward, particularly for women, that I'm really feeling.
well, you
So,
gotta, I mean, I remember, I've been sober in AA thousands of years. I mean, longer than half of the people even listening to this, but I remember hearing so many brilliant things from people I did not expect to be getting wisdom through. And one woman said one time, she said, grow or go, baby, grow or go. And that I have never forgotten ever. That's it.
oh
And
boy, I feel that's a human being. That's life on the planet. Yeah, yeah.
so that's where the urgency is. So grow, so keeping growing. And then that's where the art of the edit comes in. It takes courage to say, is this working?
Totally.
Is this working for, for me, for us, for this? I mean, just whatever it is, and to really look at it. And I also love the Marie Kondo tidying thing. I really got deeply into that this last year. This
Wonderful.
idea of asking, because we were prepping to downsize and move.
Yeah.
And so going through so many things, beautiful things, not junk, things that have meant things, but really asking the question, does this spark joy?
Yeah.
And I think that's a way of creating more joy on the planet if we surround ourselves with things that spark joy.
Indeed. So, like my plum sparks joy.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So we're going to have, for those listening in, this is a little bit different. 2 minutes to break already. All right. I know. So you and I, we're going to we need 4 hours. Jane and I need 4 hours. Okay. So I'm going to close out this session with this quote. So, because it so made me think of you. Recently, I'm sure you know this artist and professor, Nikki Giovanni. She, poet, gorgeous poet, activist, has just, professor at Virginia Tech. She just had an article about her in the Times. And the article opens up with this quote. "The door is open," Nikki Giovanni told me, "and if I'm saying something that you don't like, you can go out the door. Because I'm going to say what I think I should say." And I just was like, I can't wait to read that to Jane when she comes on my show. The gateways, the thresholds, just all of it. Okay, on that note, we're going to take our first break. And when we come back with our guest, Jane Galloway, we're going to talk about her childhood and her careers. So when we come back, stay tuned.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rains.
And we are back with our guest, author and thought leader Jane Galloway on The Edge of Every Day. So we're going to pick it up. Before we jump into, I do want to get to how you moved from your flourishing career as an actor into your choice to go into ministry. But I do want to touch on that briefly about your childhood, because, you know, when we talked prior to this, it was such a theme for us.
That's a long conversation, I think, possibly. But go ahead, ask.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about childhood and what and your sense of what you wanted to do, and your relationship with your parents and how supportive or non-supportive they might have been with you as a creative soul, as a empath. Can you expound a little bit on that?
Well, I think the empath part was the part that my mother didn't really get, but that's fine, because she was an utter extrovert and a major talent, as was my father. But really, after our conversation the other day, I realized, wow, I have never been one of these people who couldn't wait to be anything. I wanted to figure out my family, because there was a lot of really wild stuff going on. And I found the complete works of Sigmund Freud in my father's apartment when I was 8 years old, and actually tried to read it. So I thought this could definitely help my family. So, I mean, I think I wanted to please my family, and my mother and father were both performers, and quite amazing, masterful performers. And I was more of an artist. I mean, I was discovered to have great talent, or a lot of talent. I don't know, great talent, but real gifts as a performer. But I love art. And it's funny, because I remember when my mother and stepfather were just married, my stepfather had painted a big dresser completely high gloss white. And I had this imaginative thing going on. I was 7, where I was being the weather person. I don't know if you have to also have seen before these green screen weather things, but the weather people would draw all over it and then rip a piece of paper off. And I was like, so I was having a dramatic play with this dresser and drawing all over it. And my mother completely freaked out. She just thought it was wanton destructiveness that I was drawing on this thing. Now, having said this, that really, I paint, and I love color, I love design, so I taught preschool and love kids, and love helping to put in front of people what is their creative joy. And it would have been great if something had been moved in front of me that was more appropriate, or even some paper put on the front of that dresser. But I really, but the thing about leaving my acting career which I don't think you ever leave an acting career. I mean,
It's so a part of who you are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have written a one-woman piece that you were at the first reading of, and is now in another iteration. And so about growing up in Jim Crow. So I don't really think I stopped pursuing that as my profession when the AIDS crisis happened in New York, and my friends were dying of AIDS, and no one was paying attention except those of us who were going to a memorial service every week.
Right.
And I couldn't take it. It was just so overwhelming, and I wanted to be of service. Yeah. And I began to volunteer, or to train to volunteer, for hospice at St. Vincent's Hospital, the no longer existent St. Vincent's.
Wow, okay.
And I met this wonderful Sister Patrice, this little Irish nun, who said, then I got a Broadway tour, a show that was coming back to Broadway. And I said to her, I don't know what to do. She said, no, you need to do this play. But she said, you will end up doing this work. And so that really was the beginning. I began to realize that I could help myself grieve, but also I have a gift for being with people in those in-between places. Yeah. And so I trained and worked in hospice, and hospice led to ministry. So that's really what it was. I was doing TV by then, and it was louder, faster, funnier, and all of this superficial stuff. And my friends were dying. And I couldn't take it. I mean, maybe that's the empath thing is. I just couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. I wanted to be learning how to be really of service. And Ram Dass, Baba Ram Dass wrote the book, How Can I Help?
Help, yeah.
Really ask people, how can I help? And I think that by listening and being present in that way, and so that ended up evolving into ministry. So, and I thought I was going into ministry to be a hospice chaplain. I later learned I was helping old thought forms to evolve away.
Indeed. Okay, so back to the childhood and the empath. Did you do you feel that you lived out moving forward into performing when you would have preferred, and you couldn't have articulated this as a child, but there was a sense of being rewarded, and you and I share such a trajectory, a similar trajectory. It might have felt a little different to us, but the sense of not being understood by the parents and feeling like you were the adult and that you could read them better than they could read themselves. But did you feel as though there was a reward for performing with your talents when they discovered that there was a sense of living out a dream and for a parent?
I remember the moment because I was in a play. I was hoping to be a journalist. I was a budding journalist in high school and writing a fashion column. And my teacher said, "Did you ever think about being in a play?" And I was like, "No, I never did." And so he cast me in a play called Dear Ruth, which was an old, I guess a lot of high school. Anyway, I did a part in Dear Ruth. And, it was that wonderful feeling of having that big roll of laughter come from the audience. And I don't even know what I did, but, I have good comic timing.
And thus the addiction to comedy.
Oh, boy. I came home from the cast party early because I was actually kind of bored at the party. And I walked in. My mother and father were divorced when I was quite young. And they were amicable finally. But that had taken a lot of years. And I actually heard my mother on the telephone with my father. And she said, "Eddie, she's got it. She's really got it, Eddie." That was the moment. It was like that.
How did you feel then? I mean, having been at odds with her and to have that kind of sense of recognition from the one that you were butting heads with.
But it was, because I adored my mother too. I mean, I butted heads with her, but I now see her life as she was so much bigger than any paradigm the 1950s or 60s could give her. I mean,
well, that's a show in and of itself.
Yeah. What I would say is that it was really the two of them being on board in a collaborative way. I respected both of them amazingly in terms of talent. Yeah. And in terms of, I really wasn't, I love music and I love singing. I'm a great choral singer. I had a lot of anxiety about being a solo singer. So I marvel at your shows. And I wasn't really strongly encouraged by either parent to pursue music. And that was interesting. So I saw that. I took that in, and the fact that they were so unified about this. Now, shortly after that, my father died of a massive coronary, and it really devastated and was a whole other thing. But my mother also really guided me into a conservatory program at Webster University. So my mother really guided me into that. And then when I went to New York, she insisted I study, and I studied with Uta Hagen, and I studied with Anna Sokolov, both of whom terrified me. Oh my God, I was so scared of both. But I mean, and of course in school we had the whole Edith Skinner method and all the stuff that you all did. So I loved the discipline of it, but I also the psychology of it.
Yeah,
Actors
of course.
have to understand. So all this stuff I was reading in Freud as a child, here it is. It's the discipline. I think people don't, especially with this instant acting thing with TV now, a lot of people don't understand the incredible discipline of being able to repeat a performance, or being able, even at the end of doing
and do the arc.
Yes,
Not just one thing.
Of the story. Oh yeah, and be part of the arc. And also just really everyday things like, restore. I mean, you're doing a scene and you restore everything just naturally. That becomes a life skill.
Yeah.
Just restoring, putting things back in order. So I mean, studying acting was wonderful. And of course I loved actors, and I began to work very early and went to Europe with the first company, and then, had a show that was quite a hit. When I was teaching preschool in the Village in New York, and I loved it so much, and I was so torn about leaving. It was really crazy because I was in a play that became the longest running off-Broadway play eventually. Yeah. But it was a huge hit, and it was a surprise to all of us. We worked so hard on it, and yet, here it was. So so then I kind of rolled with the profession, and I've tried to deal with staying on my own ethical center, because all kinds of stuff gets flying at you when you become the toast of the town. And a lot of it was stuff I didn't even ethically believe in, doing commercials for things that were just like, oh my God, I don't want to have my, so it was an interesting time for me. It was a lot.
Well, we're so similar in the whole sense of this desire to be present to that and to glean all of the know thyself that is at the heart of being an actor, and all in psychology and all of those skills. And yet there's also the portion of the business that doesn't translate into the service element that I clearly was always, that it shows up as boredom at the party, boredom. And, and I don't want to say boredom because I don't want it to feel like a put down, but indeed it was boredom. And occasionally, and impatience with, and, the whole 9 yards. So I can understand and relate to those feelings. And how do I translate all of that when I love doing this, and I love some of the elements, but I also want to be in service over here.
I used to watch people because I was involved politically too during those days, because it was, the anti-war thing. And I, met Jane Fonda and various people who were very active with their acting careers, but also doing political work. And it was at a time when people were really needing to make some kind of statement. I kept thinking, I don't know. I mean, I guess the thing is, the paradigm for all of that is that once you become an entity, then you can speak out or something. But anyway, yes, but the service element was key.
Indeed. And you are a servant leader through and through. Yeah. And on that note, we are ready for another break. We will get to your book.
Okay.
Hopefully.
I'll show it to people when we come back. And
we'll get to your book, and I want to get into the creation of. Oh, and how we met. We'll talk about that and the creation of T.R.I.B.E. That's a perfect way of how we met. That'll seg wonderfully into T.R.I.B.E. and Sacred Stages. And so stay tuned when we come back with Dr. Jane Galloway on the Edge of Every Day.
Hey, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on TalkRadio.NYC every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.NYC. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours on the edge
Of every day. We are back with Jane Galloway on the edge of every day. So Jane, how let's talk about real quick how we met, because it segs in so beautifully into your creation of T.R.I.B.E and my creation of Sacred Stages. So it's about 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
11 years ago.
Right. Amazing.
And it was through Jack, correct?
I think so.
It was on Facebook, and we were both friends with Jack Kafari. And
Yeah.
hi, Jack, if you're listening in.
Hi.
We're thinking about you. And he said to both of us, knowing us both well,
Right.
you two need to know each other. You are like on the same trajectory. It's a must. And we reached out to each other, and lo and behold. And then I reached out to you. I was in need of a new apartment, and you hooked me up with an apartment that was being renovated in your building in Harlem. And Jane had been working and living and making great waves in Harlem, and she brought me into the building, and boom, 10 days later I moved in and we were neighbors.
It's so great.
It was glorious.
Yeah,
And
great. And you're still there. You still have the
I'm
apartment?
still there. I'm still
Yeah.
in that building, and I
Yeah.
adore it. Not in the exact same apartment, but
No. Yeah, you moved across the hall. It's
Yeah.
still up a lot of stairs. Here's my book, The Gateways, The Wisdom of 12-Step Spirituality. And, you can get it on Amazon. I think Jack actually is a part of that too, because he wrote a wonderful blurb for it.
Oh, great. Isn't that great?
Well, yeah, really the idea was that a member of the spiritual community that I and some others birthed out of the ashes of a previous experience said to me one day, you can teach so many things. I never knew there's a little shade in this comment, but that's okay.
We have edge here. It's called the edge of every day.
You can teach so many things. We want to know what works for you. And so I was like, oh, well, that's easy. It's the 12 steps plus all of these other psycho-spiritual things I've done all these years, including the Jesus path. And
Yeah.
she said, write that. We need that. So it began to write me. And,
Love that.
I made it very technicolored and beautiful and showing a lot of different.
Yeah, I purchased one when it came out.
I was just showing the folks.
Yes, of course.
I mean, I tried to make it kind of, this is a journey that transcends. I think it's really a great journey, a ladder for transformation. And it's one tool. And it does not use language of the patriarchy, which I think is ever present in so many things. Bell Hooks just made her transition who
Yes.
made such an impact on me. And she talked, I wrote this down and have it here. She said, you know, what we really are needing to move out of primacy is the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And so I would say, really,
Amen.
my desire to write this book had to do with, you know, there's a much gentler and more evolutionary way to do growth, not a punitive way that replicates the punitive family system.
Well, and that's one of the great things that I love about those of us who pull the mystical essence from the traditions, and that you've woven so beautifully in your book, that it's not the, it is the more unified, feminine, and loving each of the traditions. Not the punitive, not some God screaming and yelling, and patriarchal understanding of that was, if we're going to understand our place in history, where it arose, where each of these traditions arose in history, we understand why they had that then. But what you've pulled out, and what I've pulled out, and what hopefully people who read your book are going to pull out, is that there's a more mystical understanding, including the 12 steps.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is also, there's not, I think people who become addicted, I mean, the society is so addicted, are unbelievably creative.
Dear Lord. Yeah.
Unbelievably
Well, this
creative.
is what I was talking about, wanting the combo, the triangle of addiction with creativity and artistry and spirituality, and just those connections.
It just turns on you at a certain point sometimes. And if it does, then there are ways to go deeper into the spirituality and realize,
Indeed.
And they say in that program, we were searching for spirit, capital S, through spirits, small s. I look like I'm doing sign language here for some reason.
Works for me. Well, I think I have a song about that. They don't call it spirits for nothing.
Oh, that's
Remember
it.
that too?
Yeah, I do.
That I wrote. You can find on YouTube, everyone. They don't call it spirits for nothing. And it pokes fun at that whole, a little gin to go within, some holy water to absolve you of your sin. This relationship of spirits with spirit, and with, and our understanding as actors and artists, the connection with spirit as well.
Right.
And, the pulling of the understanding, the depth at the center of those, as I always say, know thyself, the Greek maxim, know thyself. That's at the heart of
you
those.
You want to say a little bit about T.R.I.B.E?
I do want you to say something about T.R.I.B.E.
I just want to say that I'm so grateful to the people who were part of Sanctuary NYC, who really helped me birth this idea. And part of it had to do with really trying to figure out, okay, what does a community of spirit do without all of the doctrine? Because I find doctrine and duality and all this to be so death dealing.
Well, you can't create community with that.
Well, I mean, well, the way community is created through that is through rules and
one leader.
Somebody
who's at the center of all that, not a servant leader.
No,
the group serves the leader, not the other way around.
So it was really about exploring the sacred role of the artist. I have really understood this for years through a lot of reading and stuff. And really understanding that to be what the transformational art is, creating catharsis. The Greeks created catharsis for the audience to have an aha moment and heal. And this is what we need now. So anyway, it's transformation, realization, inspiration, belonging, expression, a community, an umbrella under which all of those things can happen. So it's a kind of a free floating idea. And I'm grateful for the idea of it. I'm also almost completely through a coaching program at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And this really pulls together all of my stuff, because I think the body, mind, spirit, I was very strong on the mind and spirit part and always pursuing these body things. This institute is fantastic.
Great.
And it really, so that all goes together with T.R.I.B.E. And really it's an idea more than a place.
Yes. Excellent. It's like Sacred Stages, my Sacred Stages. I
Right. So,
get it.
talk about sacred stages.
Well, just real quickly, and I want to read. I'll talk about Sacred Stages, but what I would, if we have any time left in this break, but I want to focus on this because it so supports what you mentioned this on your website. I scoured your website in preparation for this, and you, of course, we've had conversations about this, but I didn't know that you had referenced it on your website, and I love it because it's one of my favorite books too, The Way of the Actor by Brian Bates, and this is what his in the synopsis. For thousands of years in traditional societies around the world, actors were seen as the guardians of intuitive wisdom, and the way of the actor was a path to knowledge and power. Brian Bates believes that this is still the case today, that actors fulfill an important function in our culture as modern-day seers and shamans.
That's
And
it.
that was what I reconnect. That was a favorite book, of course, that I had in conservatory, and really came to me when I was getting the idea when I was in seminary for Sacred Stages.
So you had that in conservatory, that you were exposed to that idea? That's fantastic.
Yeah. And of course,
Walk the way through the self-help section.
well, I don't know that everyone was walking around going, "Oh, I'm a shaman." I was, but
Yeah.
but
I think it's
we did get that book in conservatory.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool.
It's fantastic, and I reconnected to it and all of the roots of spirituality and how they connect with the roots of acting in ancient Greek days, and it was believed that they were channeling the gods and the goddesses, and this made great sense to me when I was trying to figure out, as I'm studying all these great world traditions, and I've all my life loved going to. I was a part of the Christian church, but I walked away from the organized religion when I was in high school. I mean, I just got that it wasn't for me. I loved the foundation. I loved Jesus. I loved the teachings. I loved the music, the ritual, the costuming. It was theater.
Right.
And I loved going to other churches, and I was attracted to other cultures in a way that was not a part of my family. I was very open to that. So anyway, long story short, I'm in seminary, and where am I going to go to have an expansive experience if I'm not a part of any organized religion? This was really something I needed to take a look at. And of course, I was very into earth-based traditions, and I still am. And I can go out into nature, but where am I going to build community? And I had this flash of the stage as an altar. And that theater was my church. And so that's where the idea for Sacred Stages was born, where I use my performing and the understanding of actor as shaman to do my version of preaching, my version of speaking. It was a way for me to find a place for community. And this is such a great place. We're going to have to take a break, but what you and I have talked about community, and you talk on your, and I've built my salon to explore community. You talk about redefining community on your website. And I loved the notion of redefining what community is. And I'd like for us to spend some time, if we can, in our next break, or our next section, our last section. And then I want to get into what we are potentially creating. So that's what we're going to focus on when we come back from our break with Dr. Jane Galloway on the Edge of Every Day.
Join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern for the Mind Behind Leadership, where we focus on what leadership really means to us and to others. We have practical discussions with the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies, owners of small businesses, and experts in psychology and behavior to get that inside track, what to do, what to avoid, and what really happens. Join me, Graham Dobbin, at the new time, 4 p.m. every Tuesday for the Mind Behind Leadership, here live on TalkRadio.NYC.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the Nonprofit Sector Connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.NYC, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.NYC.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rains, but it pours
On the edge of every day, and we are back with Dr. Jane Galloway. I hope I am enjoying this new tweaked format. I hope those of you who have been listened to more than one episode, we've tweaked a little. Jane and I are doing more of a back and forth rather than me just completely just interviewing her. And I am loving this woman, and you have got to come back. That's for sure.
For sure.
Okay, so let's talk about community. You and I have talked about this in the past, and this whole sense of the plum wanting to build community, always wanting to build community. And what I love about theater is that it's a fantastic sense of community when you're doing a show and everyone comes together with this vision and relates to creating it and moving the idea forward in service to this vision and this beautiful thing that we are birthing. And I say that I wanted to create community with Sacred Stages. I don't know how successful I was. And you and I have talked about that. And I can elaborate a little bit more on that after you talk about, I'd like to hear what community is for you. What does that mean? How does community make you feel? What's redefining community? All of that.
Yeah, I mean, I really relate to that feeling. I have said to so many people, when you come together to do a play, you really are. It's like I don't like the concept of war, but it's like going to battle together. I mean, you are you have the bonding and you go so deep into the experience.
And then in 2 seconds flat.
And then, everybody depends on everybody else. I mean, there is no kind of like, oh, well, I'll just watch you do it. No.
Right. So
it's the equal investment. But the great part is, and I've had several long running shows, but they all end eventually, which is good. And part of the thing about religion that I discovered was that, it just goes on and on and on. And so the patriarchy and the bishops and all this kind of, no matter where you go, it's all got that structure. And that's not the part of community that I want to bring forth. My best friends are still actors. I mean, and writers and creative people, but really actors, people I've worked with. And I would have to
say the same for me.
Yeah, I would say I have been, this image keeps popping up, so I'll say it quickly. I remember when I was little at my grandmother's house, I somehow found these little round discs with a hole in them. They were wood. And I said, let's start a club. And so I had these and we got things to put through them to wear around our neck. And my friend Jiggs O'Toole, who was like my neighbor. Who was,
oh my God, what a great name.
But, other kid, there were like 4 of us. And I was like, okay, let's do our club. And the thing was, I could not, it was really like herding cats. And so I always think of that thing when I think of some of the spiritual communities too, because creative free expression is so important to me, but the discipline we learn in the theater makes the theater work. Yeah. And in spiritual communities, I mean,
it is fluid to a point of insanity. Well,
and everybody's got different ideas of why they're doing or what they're doing. And I'm not interested. My thing is, really a dedication to what we know can be this point of transformation. So you know what occurred to me as you were describing all this earlier was just the idea of maybe I have run into a thing through all of my years in the theater, and I've had some wonderful successes on Broadway, off Broadway, TV, film, all of that. But many actors say, oh, yeah, I'm not a teacher. Don't use this to teach. And playwrights will say it's a little too teachy. I think there's something in really talking maybe on a forum, some forum with artists about teasing out this sacred role. Because a lot of, I think we're in such a new time.
Oh, absolutely.
As a world.
And I think plenty of people who would love to step out of the ego of it and into more of that I think that they would really, really jump on that idea as opposed to yank them out of, all of the things that we discovered that bored us, that made us feel as though we wanted to reach to something else. And
also as a woman, I mean, I think that part of the thing, and also because we're both women, and I certainly, the role.
I play one on TV.
I played one on TV too, many times. And some of the parts, here's the thing, these stereotypes, and, Me Too doesn't even scratch the surface. I mean, the whole industry is one that really is, about power and control, really. So all of these creative people are part of that. And then how do we lose that in the process? I think the thing of really, you asked earlier about why did I leave the theater? Part of it was I was so bored with the roles I started to get. The minute I turned 40, I was like, what is this? Yeah. I mean, they were laughable stereotypes of some guy's idea of what a woman was. And it was really.
Have you seen that League of Her Own, Gina Davis? She's got an institute. She has a documentary about this.
She does, and she very much on her. Yeah, very much.
Oh my gosh, it's
Gina Davis is
shockingly informative.
Head on, right? Yeah. So that the thing is, I wanted to experience life, and I have really experienced life. I have learned, and I hate to draw a binary comparison like this, but what I have learned is that the generosity and real sense of mission of most actors and theater artists I know is greater than ministers I have met.
Fascinating. I
don't think the context feeds it. I think there is somehow, whatever it is, ministers, and I mean ranging from very traditional to interfaith to, all kinds of very free forms.
I completely
not that sense
agree
of
with you.
The mission of coming together to do this sacred thing together. There's still something not there. So that doesn't interest me anymore, that kind of form. But what interests me is these amazing people who are still doing this.
Yeah.
I think, yes, I agree with you that everybody, so many people I know in the theater would, I think, love to.
They would jump on this. Absolutely jump on it.
Ego and competitive.
To reconnect them if they've lost it to the nobility of it, to the spirituality of it. And indeed tease it out of the circus that it can be in today's world. Anyway. Right. I want to segue away from that. That's a great idea. I think we should definitely talk about that further. But with what time we have left, I want to talk about where are we going? What's the future holding? What is the future holding for you in general? How do you hope to address it? What's next for you? What are you envisioning?
Well, as I said, I did pull out my this one woman piece I wrote. And it's really about growing up in Jim Crow, kind of with a voice of Scout, in To Kill a Mockingbird, kind of observing all this. I began writing about St. Louis from that perspective a number of years ago. And when I developed the piece, I jumped into it after Ferguson happened. And I wrote and wrote and wrote, and it got way too, I needed.
I loved your blog on this. talk about a little bit around that, you know, because it's so about women's issues right now and women being honest and women's voice and AKA their truth, your truth. Talk about what you said about asking for too much input and having it go in a direction that maybe.
Right. I read a wonderful book by Brenda Euland, and I recommend it if you want to write. And in it, she says, be careful who you show your work to. And I became a bit insecure about the work. Now I want to I've had some thoughts beyond that blog, actually, because I was directed in a whole other way. And I really had to defend my own idea. And I lost interest. I lost the through line, I thought.
Yeah.
I pulled it together. I put it in there. I felt it was important to talk about it. It was really a cautionary tale, this piece initially, trying to say, people, this is what's going on now. Weirdly, when I went back
just to let you know, we're at 3 minutes.
Okay, when I went back to it, I realized, wait a minute, there's a through line in there. And I needed to let it gestate. Yeah. And so I tweaked it somewhat, but the stuff that I was told to remove was right to remove. So I went back to it the other day, or a couple of weeks ago. I've shared it now with a director I've worked with, someone I love who's so smart. And I'm going to be very careful. My whole idea, back to servant leadership, is this. I think it's important for people to understand that even our dearest loves, I tell something that my father said when I was a child that absolutely shocked me, that doesn't paint him in a great light. He becomes a hero again later, but I mean, I think we have to learn from personal stories what living in white supremacy is like for all of us.
Yes.
And really understand what has happened, and that more than critical race theory or whatever has been hijacked in order to, I mean, that's a college class and something.
Right, and quite frankly, that, yeah, it's a different animal and a different
stories.
Fruit.
We need stories. We need to understand that it's been a mystery, and we need from understanding it willfully. There's a reason.
Absolutely, and we need to come to an end, and clearly we have to come back and focus. Start our conversation there.
Okay.
And by the next time you come back, you will have maybe written more. Anyway, it's Jane. You can find Jane Galloway, janegalloway.com. You can find Jane's book on Amazon, or you can get to your local bookstore and order it.
You can order it.
And it's The Gateways, The Wisdom of 12-Step Spirituality.
It's pretty.
It's fantastic. You can find me at sandrabargeman.com, and I'm going to leave us with a little poem from Christopher Logue. Come to the edge, we might fall. Come to the edge, it's too high. Come to the edge, and they came, and he pushed, and they flew. Jane Galloway, thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back. We're going to schedule it ASAP.
Can't wait to
and and we've got lots to talk about. I'll talk with you afterwards.
Great.
I want to thank everyone for listening in. Thank you for being here on the edge every day. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, next Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Happy New Year. We're always at the edge of the miraculous. Good night, everyone. Thanks again, Jane Galloway.
Thank you.
The last day.